So in March of 2025, I posted an essay in Substack called My Favorite Single Issue Superhero Comic Book is X Factor number 87. And that is like the precursor for this podcast, where so far I have interviewed 7 different comic book fans and creators who have told me their top 3 favorite comics. And some people have asked numerous times what mine was. So this week, I thought I would give you my absolute number one. It's in an article I wrote, like I said, from March, but I think I'll just talk about it for a little bit. I'm going to read from the article and I'm going to add a little bit more to it as I go. So, in 1992, Marvel's flagship mutant titles, that was X-Men, Uncanny X-Men, X-Factor, and X-Force, they embarked upon an epic 15-part crossover titled Executioner's Song that includes the standalone comic Strife's Strike File. With beautiful art from Andy Kubert, Jay Lee, Greg Capullo, and Brandon Peterson, they are artistic wonders, right? And they were when I was a teenager, and they still are today. I like comic book art. What can I say? Joe Quesada, Peter David, the absolute GOAT, rest in peace. Fabian Nicieza and Scott Lobdell also did all the writing work for this story. And they are fun, bombastic stories. They're superhero comic books that travel through the madness of their self-created world with reckless abandon, right? They just don't care. I am more than 30 years removed from the first time I read Executioner Song, and I can say with absolute certainty that they are everything they are supposed to be. Everything I expected of superhero comic books at the time, and frankly, to a certain degree, still do. They're awesome. One caveat though, they did not prepare me for X Factor number 87. X Factor number 87, in my humble opinion, is the best single issue superhero comic book ever. It's at least the best one I've ever read. Peter David, again, the GOAT, RIP, and Joe Quesada were the writer and artist, respectively, on the book. And in my head, when I first read it, when I was whatever I was, 13 maybe, I don't know. They gave me a new way to tell mainstream superhero stories. I consider this book actually more of a turning point for the big 2 publishers, Marvel and DC, than their more prestige stuff like The Dark Knight Returns, Arkham Asylum, Watchmen, X-Men, God Loves, Man Kills. All great books, every single one of them. And they had, huge effects on the medium as a whole, but they are different in that they are now and always have been offered to the reader as something different than the mainstream monthly superhero comic books. They were elevated in a way, right? Like somebody who wouldn't normally read comics would read Arkham Asylum, would read Watchmen, would maybe even read The Dark Knight Returns, God Loves, Man Kills. They didn't have the stigma that a floppy has. So yeah, stories like that had been presented in superhero comics before, but not in like a regular floppy. Not to my eyes anyway at the time. X Factor 87, I think, comes out of the gates with a little more respect than other comics that were coming out at the time, because it does something so unique. Again, for the time. The cover doesn't make it seem that way. It makes it seem like X Factor, which is a mutant superhero team, for those who don't know, is about to face off against this like villain, and you're not quite sure who it is. Is it Professor Xavier? I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell. And so you got to start flipping through it, right? So, Executioner Song was about a mutant from the future who blames Cyclops and Phoenix for all of his timeline's troubles. He travels back in time to kill Professor Charles Xavier and do a bunch of other dastardly deeds, and one of those has a lasting effect on all of the comic books in the X family. And so it's a big deal, but it's a very traditional comic book story, right? Time travel, superhero antics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When the dust settles in Executioner's Song, the good guys have won. They are changed, but status quo is basically the same, right? They go from that adventure to a new one. In Peter David and Joe Quesada's hands, X Factor, the first issue following Executioner's Song, does something completely different. In 23 pages, it addresses the psychological after effects of living through one hell of a traumatic experience after another. It addresses the fact that though these people are superheroes with superpowers, they are in fact human, the most important thing any character in any story can be. And it does it so well. So the guy in the chair is Dr. Leonard Samson, a famously gamma irradiated psychiatrist within the Marvel Universe. He is asked to meet with each member of X Factor, who were at the time a government-sponsored mutant team. So the United States government asked Dr. Samson to meet with them to dive into how they're feeling after everything they have just gone through. The results are both exactly what you'd expect and weirdly revealing at the same time. For example, with Pietro Maximoff, Quicksilver, son of Magneto, I still consider him son of Magneto, readers get an explanation about why, though he is a good guy, he is also, frankly, kind of an asshole. And there's this whole section, whole page in the book where he explains why he is the way he is. He says, "Tell me, doctor, have you ever stood in a line at a banking machine behind a person who didn't know how to use it, or wanted to buy stamps at the post office, and the fellow in front of you wants to know every single way he can ship his package to Istanbul, or gotten some counter idiot at Burger King who can't comprehend Whopper no pickles? And how do you feel on those occasions?" Samson says, impatient, irritated, a little angry. Petro goes, "Precisely, because your life is being slowed down to a crawl by the inabilities or the inconvenient behavior of others. It's not a rational or considerate attitude to have, but here it is. Now, imagine, doctor, that everyone you work with, everywhere you go, your entire world is filled with people who can't work cash machines. I'd venture to say, doctor, that you too would suffer from PMS. Get the picture? Not so puzzling now, is it?" PMS, by the way, is Petro Maximoff syndrome. So it explains a lot about him. By the way, during this whole little conversation, Petro is putting together like a 1,000,000-piece puzzle, and he does it like that. So we're given a glimpse into Jamie Madrick's or Multiple Man's fear of being alone. We're shown Havoc, Alex Summers' brother to Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, aka leader of the X-Men, his deep-seated fear of failure and the way he always sadly compares himself to his older brother. We see Val Cooper, the U.S. government's liaison for the team, unwavering confidence in her own incorrect opinions all through the issue. Not to be ignored is Renee Sinclair, or Wolfsbane's revelations. She struggles with confusion about authority figures in general, and Havoc specifically. Naturally, these issues stem from the fact that her first caretaker was a horribly abusive priest. So it's a lot. But then we have Lorna Dane, Polaris, daughter of Magneto. She shows readers that despite her beauty and intelligence, she is stuck in a spiral of self-loathing that leaves even her seasoned psychiatrist speechless. Some of that speechlessness stems from Lorna's obvious misinterpretation of his words and refusal to face reality, and some of the speechlessness stems from the fact that Lorna puts it upon herself to show off a revealing costume to prove she's proud of her body, something that Dr. Samson was in no way, shape, or form trying to get her to do. Lorna, it seems, is a case study in body dysmorphia and eating disorders. These are serious topics with serious ramifications for all the characters, ramifications that last throughout their fictional lives. To be fair, depending on the writer, these issues can be addressed with care, subtlety, and nuance, or they can be magnificently fumbled. David famously does not fumble. But I've saved the absolute best for last. Guido Carosella, also called Strong Guy, he's a jokester. He's sly, he's fun. He's kind of like Bugs Bunny if Bugs Bunny was super strong, somewhat deformed mutant. In other words, he's great. In X Factor 87, he reveals that he is, in fact, not great. His mutant ability is to absorb kinetic energy. The only problem is he has to release it pretty quickly or the buildup can permanently disfigure him. As a boy, he figured this out the hard way as his powers manifested when he was both beat up and hit by a bus in a matter of minutes. And he says, by then, the damage was done. At least I stopped it before it got worse. But to this day, I'm in constant agony. Constant. Oh, I don't let on, of course, because the guys, like I said, they'll feel sorry if they know I'm hurting. So I make with the jokes to cover it. The guys, the team, are the first real friends I've had. If they pitied me, it'd kill me. So let's make sure this stays between you and me, you know? When you partner these revelatory character moments with Quesada's stylized art, the comic book is elevated. I never imagined Quesada's style working in such a mundane setting as a psychiatrist's office with no fighting, no lasers, and no explosions. But it does. Furthermore, the juxtaposition of colors Mary Javin's bright, dominant colors with Quesada's anime-influenced hypermuscular superheroes against the tonal maturity of the story offers a more nuanced and human way to present mainstream superheroes. Though they are larger than life, as the art proves, they are also all too human, as the writing proves. This, of course, is something we see to this day in mainstream comics and their film counterparts. This is not to say that I hold X Factor 87 as the greatest superhero comic book story ever written, though it is up there, or that its influence alone caused mainstream superhero comic books to mature in a way that they hadn't before. There are several factors at play both then and now that have done and continue to do this. But when it comes to the mainstream superhero story about the mainstream superheroes many of us know in their mainstream in continuity universes, when it comes to being just another issue on the rack at the drugstore, X Factor number 87 does do that. And it does it so well that it continues to influence creators to this day. This, dear viewers or listeners, is why I consider X Factor 87 the greatest single issue of any superhero comic book ever. So now, please, tell me, what's yours? Thanks. That's it for today. That's it for this week. As always, if you enjoyed this, please feel free to like, subscribe, share, all that fun stuff. If you would like to discuss your favorite superhero comic books with me, you know where to find me, at AE Stuvie, all over the internet. Have a good week.